Welcome to Diversity Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Allison. Today's guest is Lillian Brummet. This woman has been through a series of traumatic events in her life, and she's here to tell us about her story. I can't wait for her to share her story and all of the lessons that she's experienced. Let's go. Hey, Lillian, welcome to the Overcoming Adversity Podcast. It's a pleasure to have you as a guest. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's really great to be here with you today.
Absolutely. Lillian, I know that you've been through a good deal of traumatic experience in your life. And for you to come on here on this podcast, to share your story, it's an absolute honor to have you because not too many people have the courage to even be vulnerable and transparent. But what I love about your story is that you're willing to help people, share your lessons and stuff like that. So if you can take us back, take us what happened to you, what went on in your life, and how you handle some of these experiences that you had.
Looking back, sometimes I think, how many things happened in succession and how I survived it. It just blows my mind sometimes. I grew up in a broken home. My mom actually married 5 times in her lifetime. So there was a lot of back and forth, different homes. Sometimes we lived with her, sometimes we didn't. Two of those relationships that she got involved in brought abuse into our family. And both those men were far too interested in me at night than they should have been. And it ended up destroying the family, the whole family unit. Each time I opened my mouth and told about it, it destroyed everything. And so it created this ambiance in our family where we don't talk about these things. It's a big secret. We don't tell anybody where we came from or what happened. And my mom generated a lot of falsehoods, a lot of stories that we had to memorize and tell every time we moved somewhere or did something. And it created in me this sense of resentment that we couldn't be honest. And I think that's why I'm like honest overdrive as an adult. I don't like it when people don't, they say, oh, don't tell this about yourself or whatever. That's not going to happen with me. I'm an open book. I'm going to be honest. So I think that's where that comes from. The second time this happened was with my mom's third husband. She had taken us from the United States. We lived in California, Nevada area, and we moved to this rural location, this farming location. Turns out the guy was a total abuser, an alcoholic, and real evil guy. And he drove both my brothers out of the home. Basically, they were on their own before they were 16.
Wow.
And I was left alone in that situation for a couple of years. And then my mom got tired of dealing with my outbursts and sent me away to this little farming school, boarding school. And I lived there for about a year and a half before she called me back when she decided to leave him. Then we went through the whole, women's shelter, transition houses, her finding a job, us building a new life. So while this is all happening, he found out where I was going to school, and he stopped me one day and he said to me, he wanted to meet up with my mom again, wanted to, see if he could get back together with her. And I wouldn't give him any information, and I was terrified. I was trying to get away from him. I had some friends with me, luckily. And he said to me, he got mad and he lost his temper. And he said to me, basically, I was never going to get over him. That every time I looked in the mirror, I was going to see the scars. I was going to always have that with me, that he would always be a part of me. So that made me really mad. And I was like heck you are kind of thing. And I got really belligerent, really angry in my life after that. Uh, it wasn't too long after that, my mom being a broken person and me being a broken teenager at that time, there was all this conflict, and my mom couldn't handle me having me at home. So I came home from babysitting one night and I had some bags on the porch. And I was 13 and a half years old. It was summer. By winter, I had gotten an apartment and was working and putting myself through school and stuff like that. Um, Later on, I ended up having numerous friends that either committed suicide or had gotten in themselves in really damaging, harmful situations that caused their death. And so I lost friend after friend, and it became really hard for me to to function. And I felt like I had to do something to get out of this. And there was no, shining knight in armor that was going to come rescue me. It was up to me. And so that's when I really started delving into reading self-help books and getting some help in that way. Um,
Wow.
I was 16, I got caught living on my own, and I got put in a foster home for a short period of time. Had to go back to regular school for a while and do this family thing, which was really weird. But she was a social worker, and she recognized the signs in me, and she helped me understand why I was an insomniac. I couldn't sleep. Why I was having all the nightmares, why I had such anxiety and fear and anger. And she helped me confess what happened with the third husband. And I ended up taking him to court. And that was my journey, my initial journey into crawling out of like hell inside myself, inside the walls that I had built for myself, and opening up and becoming the person I am today. That was the spark of it.
Wow, Lillian, your story is absolutely incredible. And for one to be a survivor and at some point reclaiming your life, going through all of these traumatic experience, I truly believe that is powerful. I, you know, there's so many people that's going to hear your story and it's so resounding because there's so many people in this world that are suffering in silence, and you were brave enough to tell that story. I want to ask you this as we unpack this a little bit. You know, if you could talk a little bit about if or was did you ever get a chance to meet your biological father and see did do you ever think that played a part into that? And then I want to know a little bit about also the family dynamics. Do you think the moving around, the different people, all of those different things contributed to a solid foundation in regards to when it comes to building a family and raising a family for you as growing up?
Ooh, okay. The family dynamic being so broken, when I looked at people around me, when I started dating my husband, who I've been with for 30 years, over 30 years now, um, I found their situation so foreign and strange because all
Mhm.
I knew was the broken, the damaged. I didn't understand that whole white picket fence, leave it to beaver, life. That was just, whoa, that's weird. That's TV. It was just, it seemed fake. It seemed so weird. And every time I was put in that position, come meet my parents, something like that, it would terrify me because it was so weird and so different. Um, Ironically, now today, my brothers and I communicate more, and my aunt and I communicate more than Dave does with his family members. And I find that really strange. And maybe it's like you say, there's that because it was missing in our youth, we cherish it more in our when we're as an adult.
You know, I could think you, as I'm hearing your story, it sounds like you obviously it didn't live a normal girl childhood, as you want to say, as normal girls. And sadly, you got robbed of that, and that was taken from you. If you can you tell us a little bit about what was it like in school, like with teachers, interacting with friends,
Mhm.
going out to play, going out on play dates, hanging out, going to friends' houses and things like that. Did any of those things exist, or was there a bit of anxiety? Was there a bit of depression? Was there a bit of PTSD and concern or nervousness or anything like that? That you might even go and tell the family story or anything like that while you was growing up.
Yeah, there was a lot of that. I had great relationships with friends, but my relationship with them was much deeper than theirs was with me. That for them, I was like this playmate. For me, they were my family. So I created these really strong connections with these people. And at the same time, I put up these barriers because I didn't want them to see that I had that strong connection. If they saw it, that means they have the weapon to hurt me. So I was really careful about that, but I felt really deeply. Um, I didn't do the whole sleepover thing. I mean, there was a couple of times I remember when I was still living with my mom when she allowed me to have a friend over, and once I slept over at someone else's place. But I found that really awkward and weird, and I don't know, it was uncomfortable being in the same room, and now we're undressing and we're wearing night clothes together, and I don't know, it felt really uh, awkward and strange to me. It didn't feel right to me. So, no, it wasn't really something I really went for in that regard. My friends always felt that I was different. They always wondered why there was no furniture at my house. They didn't, because, when I lived with my mom, we didn't have hardly anything. There was a, mattress on the floor. When I lived on my own, same thing. I had a beanbag that I found in an alley, and I had a bed that I borrowed from a friend, and that was all I had in my apartment for like the first few years. And people would come over there, they would think, like later on, as adults were talking, and they would say, "Well, we thought it was strange that you didn't have any furniture and all of that." But none of them realized, none of them knew my story. And I thought that was so strange as an adult looking back, that all those kids, they never knew, they never understood that I was on my own, and that I didn't have parents, and that I was paying rent, and that's why my hands were so rough, and that's why I was so physically strong, and that's why I wasn't interested in dating boys. It wasn't that I had any other interest in any other way. It's just that I wasn't interested in pursuing relationships because been there, done that wasn't so great, because it was with men in my past. And so for me, it wasn't something that I was interested in pursuing. So they had a very different sort of, giggly life that I couldn't connect with. I couldn't understand. I'm like working, man. I'm working 2 or 3 jobs in between doing school. I'm trying to pay my rent. I got a runaway with living with me. I'm eating like tomato soup and lettuce sandwiches. It was not a lifestyle that was anywhere near what they were, going through.
Incredible, incredible. You know, the interesting thing as I think about this, I was watching something on TV the other day, but in regards to like your story, it kind of relates to it a little bit as back 10, 20, I would say probably like 20 years ago, some of these stories that I'm hearing now similar to yours was not highlighted, spotlighted. People weren't talking about it, and we bottled those things in.
Mhm.
And a lot of people were didn't have any outlets to share that story, and led to them being in isolation and all of these different things that come with that story. You mentioned insomnia,
Mhm.
and I could imagine someone like yourself going through this, experiencing this, and replaying it inside of your mind, and how it triggers so many other things that you just mentioned in regards to like relationship, that you may want to date somebody or engage with somebody or communicate with someone, but now you're much more apprehensive because that's not your thought, and your experience was horrible when it did happen. Can you talk a little bit about what were you going through? What were you facing? Did you face any sort of like depression, isolation, nightmares, PTSD, that you were going while those things were happening to you? And can you tell us a little bit about how did you cope with that?
When it's happening, you go numb. You
Mhm.
you literally you go numb. You become someone else. You almost split into someone else. This is happening. This is, daddy at night, and this is daddy at day. This is daddy when he drinks. This is daddy when he's not drinking. You
Hmm.
split. It's not the same thing. It can't be the same thing. Later on, when I was at the boarding school, I pretended and tried to convince myself that I wasn't actually a member of that family. I told myself I was adopted. I must have been adopted. They wouldn't do this to someone that was their own. So I couldn't be part of that family, and to disassociate with myself from that family. So I did pretending. I did being numb, and I did anger, a heck of a lot of anger, a lot of self hate, a ton of self hate, some self harm. Um, Later on, when I started getting exposed to therapists, counseling, stuff like that, uh, I got angrier because now they're probing at it, they're
Right.
poking at it. And I got angrier and angrier about that. And I also got like angry at some of their questions. I thought, how impertinent, how dare they? Um, so I had issues with accepting that process, that help. However, when I turned to books, I was able to go back into my own world and my own realm, which is where I always found refuge. Either with writing. When I was a kid, I always turned to writing. I still do. And so books were a natural, next step from that. And I started scouring all the self-helps that I could, the all the ones that had like workbooks in the back where they ask you questions to fill out, stuff like that. And I started working on that to understand the process, the situation, why they did what they did, and how I'm dealing with that, how I'm feeling with that. The nightmares, I still get nightmares. If I have times when I'm really stressed, I have issues with anxiety. So my mind is like trained to keep putting stresses and keep pumping that cycle. And even though it's a different dialogue it's telling me now than it was in my childhood, I think it's still stuck in that rut. And so I battle that. I battle the stress, I battle the anxiety, the repetitive thought pattern. But when I'm stressed and when I'm feeling vulnerable, that's when the anxiety that's when those nightmares come up again. If there was something that happened in the neighborhood where the police were around, I'll have nightmares for weeks after that. If I'm watching a movie which happens to have a scene that triggers something in me, I'll have nightmares. So I still get them, but not like I used to. When I was a kid, I was afraid to go to sleep. And so I would drink. I would drink a lot of coffee. I would do anything I could to not sleep. And when I did sleep, it had to be like, go to sleep now, so hard that I didn't even know I fell asleep, kind of thing. So exhausted. And that was the only way I was able to get through that part of it. It wasn't until after long into the self therapy, that I was starting to crawl out of that and actually get sleep and not be so afraid. Yeah.
So, wow. So I know that trauma often leads to some like deep emotional wounds, right? And I could hear
Mhm.
that in your voice, and I could hear that in your story. I want to transition a little bit, as some of our listeners could resonate with your story, right? So if you could tell us a little bit now about how did you navigate, right, the void of emptiness and all of these things that you were feeling, to like start rebuilding your life, developing some strategies, developing some practices to
Mhm.
that led to like some instrumental things for you to just reclaiming and regaining your life now.
It started from probably a negative place. Like one of my friends told me that anger can be a good thing sometimes.
Hmm.
Um, I've always seen it as a negative thing because anger hurts the person who's angry. but but it was anger that got me going. Anger about the situation, anger about how dare they, see me as the black sheep of the family when they did this to me. How dare they criticize me? How dare they say I'm never going to be anything? I'm going to show them. And so it came from a place like that of, that's it. I'm I'm going to prove it no matter what. Later on, it came from a place uh, of self-respect and self-love, but I didn't have that for a really long time. I had to really, really work to get to that point. Um, I think that I think that you really have to be willing to do the work. You have to realize, hey, nobody's going to rescue me.
Right.
I'm the one who has to take that fish hook, and I have to, rip it out of the wound. And it's the fish hook that they put into me, and they kept it in me, but I'm taking it out now, and I'm going to let this wound heal, and I'm going to do the work to allow it to heal, whatever it needs to do the healing process. And then I'm always going to have that scar, but that wound is no longer going to define me. And that's kind of how I came at it. This very proactive, pull up my pants, be a big girl, and deal with it. I saw a lot of people around me using crutches, drugs or alcohol or religion or whatever they used, or relationships, clinging to relationships, because that's the thing that was going to save them, rescue them, hold them up in their life. And I didn't want to have to lean on a crutch. I wanted to be able to stand on my own 2 feet. I also felt that, in my 20s, as I started maturing, I felt like I couldn't really love and be loved if I didn't really know and understand myself. And with the realization that we're always changing and evolving, of course, but I felt like if I wasn't showing my real self, I was just putting up all these facades and faces and personalities that I didn't even know if they were mine or not. They were just learned responses that I was putting out there because that was approved, that was okay. So if someone was falling in love with me and wanted to date with me, I would never really trust that, because I would feel like, how can I trust that they actually love me, because they don't know me. So I realized that I had to do that work and learn myself. And it started with the silliest things. I had to, like, fill out questionnaires. I found these really neat questionnaires to learn about yourself, right down to, like, what color do I like? I don't
Mhm.
know, never thought of it, never crossed my mind. What kind of clothes do you like to wear? I have no idea, you know. And so I had to, like, work through these things and really think about them and begin to understand myself and grow into being the person I wanted to be. Um, and right at that stage, I was meeting Dave, my husband today, and he was the one who got me to talk. So typically, if I got upset about something or afraid about something or a situation became uncomfortable, I'm out. I'm gone. I just grab a garbage bag, I throw whatever I can fit in it. I'm gone. I'm out. And I have nothing to say. There's no discussion, nothing. Um, with him, it was like, okay, slow down. you know, uh, you didn't like that I didn't turn off the bathroom light. That's okay. Whatever the situation was, like, that's just an example, but and so we would sit down and actually talk about it. And that was really weird for me to sit there and say, okay, well, this is how I'm feeling. And to have someone else stand there and go, okay, that's how you're feeling. And that was it. There was no judgment. There's no, I'm going to fix you. There's no, what are we going to do with this? It was just, okay, that's how you're feeling. And that was such a strange place for me to be. And once I realized that that was a safe place, then I was able to really start moving into the healing of process. I think that's what victims need the most, is to feel safe and to not be judged for what they're feeling.
Lillian, what you're saying to me is like resonating so much. And for me, whenever I talk about it in my books or I speak, and I always talk about breaking the bottle. And it sounds like you had a lot of emotions bottled in, and all of those were tied to a lot of limiting beliefs. And what what it shows is the transformation for yourself, though, as in you learned a lot of things about yourself and you started letting a lot of these beliefs go, and it started allowing you to be your true authentic self. And then it allowed you to start loving, right?
Mm.
And and when it comes to like forgiveness, right, it's like the forgiveness for yourself, which allows you to break free of things, right? Not for the person that abused you. And now Dave is in your life, and now he's helping you, and now you guys have created a partnership. And I think that's the beauty of releasing some things, releasing all of these toxins and things, and like breaking all of these things that were just holding you back. If you
Mhm.
could talk a little bit about, what were like some of the core like principles and standards and values that you discovered about yourself, that you started like making you smile about yourself and happy about yourself and be like, oh, I like this is cool about me, and these are things that I'm willing to say no to now, opposed to maybe your life was dictated in other different ways in the past. And what are some things that you live by now that are dictating your life now?
Hmm. Well, you bring up some great issues there. First of all, when it comes to forgiveness, there were two parts of that for me. Acceptance was more of it than forgiveness. Acceptance that it is what it is. What happened, happened.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I got to be. Um, the other part where I was able to find forgiveness was forgiveness of myself for just being a child. And you know, that letting go of the weight of the responsibility of blame of self-hate. I was able to let that go, forgiving of self. I was able to understand over time, as I became more into my adulthood, some of the damage my mom had within herself that caused her to make the decisions and live the lifestyle that she did. And with that understanding came some forgiveness. Um, so that did happen over time. Um, like to just to write for me was such a cathartic thing, like to put it on paper, to share it with others, to share my story was such a cathartic and therapeutic thing for me. It really helped me process what I was going through privately. But when I started to share it with others, I realized that the story could be a path of healing for other people too. And so that slowly came to me through like entering poetry contests, um, having some poetry purchased by magazines and other publications, and then hearing back from those readers how it impacted them. And I slowly came to that realization that, you know what, I do have worth. I have value in this world. Maybe I have discovered a purpose here. Maybe I can create positive change with my life and, maybe wash out that dirty soul and make it brand and shiny new again by doing these positive activities. And so it was a slow journey, but that's really where it led to. You slowly grow to understanding that you can have an impact, that you are of worth, that you do have value, that you do matter, that there's a reason why you live now, why you survived, and why you were given this time that you have in front of you. And it's just a matter of choosing what you're going to do with that time. Are you going to continue to cause self-harm and live in that hell, or are you going to move forward and create something positive with your life? It's just a level of understanding that where you just say, okay, I've got to let things go. I can't hang on to those things anymore, and I'm going to move forward in my life. It doesn't mean they disappear or that the memories don't come up, or every once in a while something trigger will happen and, oh great, I got some more learning to do, some more healing to do. But it's just being like patient with yourself, being patient with the process, putting in the work, um, and finding something that gives you joy. Always find something that gives you joy, whether it's sitting by the lake and just being by yourself, whether it's being out in the garden playing with the dirt, um, go to the animal shelter and play with the puppies, whatever it is that gives you those moments of joy. You have to start feeding that to yourself. And sometimes you have to eradicate all the negativity around you. Get rid of the newspapers, turn off the news, get rid of friendships and relationships and situations where it's not feeding you positive energy. Start feeding your brain positive information, news, experiences, so that your brain, so that you're training your brain to to take a different path and to look for different things in life. When you're in that mode, when you're in that depression, all you see is darkness, 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 and everybody else has these sparkles of light, and you envy that, and you're angry at that they have that and you don't. But you can't see it because your brain isn't trained to see it. So you have to start feeding your brain these moments of positivity until it starts recognizing, oh, look, there's a bright light over there around the corner. I'm going to go check that out. And you start moving in another direction.
So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
There was a transition that took place for you as I'm listening to you say that, and it went through the transition of a level of compassion, a deep compassion, where now you've experienced some things in your life. So anyone that you encounter that has experienced that as well, you are now a thought leader, you're now a voice, you're now a mentor, you're someone that could help some of these people. And I love the fact when you applied these three things: decision, direction, and destination.
Mm.
So you chose to identify where I'm going to start living for a purpose, I'm going to start living for a mission and start serving other people and helping other people. And you chose to apply some of the new decisions that you're going to start making to help people. You chose to apply and go in a direction where this is the way that I'm going to go and change the way my life is going. And doing so, you've done some amazing things. So you decided to write a book and start helping people. So if you can, tell us a little bit about the book that you wrote, and who is this book for, and what can readers pick up from your book?
Okay, so we're talking about the book Towards Understanding. This is a collection of 125 poems that I put in chronological order. So it tells the healing journey that I went through from about the age of like 17, 16, 17 to about, I don't know, 20, 21, something like that. And the reason, my first initial reason for releasing it was because of the experiences that I had with therapists and counselors who I felt were like book taught, but weren't able to really feel the experiences that their clients were going through, to really understand the deep down, dark, hidden emotions that they're going through. And so I wrote it in order to, or I published it in order to share that with them. But it ended up being actually the victims that I heard back from the most, that it was helping their journey in that regard. Um, it's a it's a positive story. It doesn't dwell on the pain. It dwells on the journey of healing. But I think it opens up a lot of understanding and compassion and empathy for people who are going through that, because now people can really really feel, because poetry just, it like music, you feel it. You can
Yes.
feel what they were going through and what they were imagining in their heads, the cycles that they were going through. And so that was the main purpose with that book.
As you're telling me that, I recall when I was going through counseling initially. I avoided counseling for like 10 years. And when I first stepped into a hospital to get help, that was my first impression that the people that are trying to help me are literally pulling up a book from from whatever they learned, or psychiatry training and things like that. And they're literally going step by step and not really trying to understand anything about Michael or what Michael is really going through or dealing with. And it became so superficial. So you went on and wrote another book. So
That's right.
if you can, tell me about this
Okay.
book as well too.
Okay, yeah, after the Towards Understanding came out, when it first came out, actually, I was terrified. I thought, what have I done? I was really worried about how it was going to be received. It was a really scary process for me. I was also really worried about how it was going to affect my relationships, with the tentative relationships that we had started in our family, my
Mhm.
family. And so I was worried how it was going to affect that. But it ended up being a point of communication. We started speaking a little bit more about the past because I published it. So that was an interesting side note from that. The next book in that series is called Rhythm and Rhyme. This
Mhm.
is a poetry book series that we actually titled Playing with Words, because to me, that's what working with poetry is. You get to play like an artist, you get to create imagery and paint with colors like, like a painter. And so it can be a lot of fun. You play with rhythm and stuff like that. My husband, being a musician, of course, that's where the rhythm came from. And we were able to publish some of his work in this book as well. This one is a little bit more mature, where I'm focusing on things like dealing with long-term relationship, dealing with more adult issues like caregiving and grief, and pursuing passion. We're also in there, we're celebrating nature and love and music, and writing. We celebrate that in this book. And Dave, in his poetry, he has this really quirky sense of humor. So he'll say things that have these profound, you know, insight into culture, into the world as it is today. And yet he does it with this tongue-in-cheek way that it comes across so friendly, rather than pointing the finger or judging or some other, view it might be taking. It comes from a more lighthearted, sort of humorous way. And I love that part of it. So yeah, it's great to have him in this book too.
Thank you for sharing that and sharing your two books. Lillian, for folks that are listening, right, and know someone that's been through your experience or experienced some of the same things that you have, right? How can you help them or share with them some of the misconceptions around going through trauma and help debunking some of those things to getting past some of these hurdles? Because your story is a clear resonance of that, showing that, yes, I was hurt, I've been there, but what now?
Mhm. I think that people that are in the real depths, they're really wallowing in that depression. They're in the real depths of their own hell. Um, they're not in a place of receiving advice necessarily, because people are always giving them advice, and it can become very, very irritating to them, as opposed to someone who has compassion and empathy for them is what they really need right now. They need this space of comfort. They need to go through the emotions that they're going through, and it's okay that they're feeling the way that they're feeling. You need to do that. You need to feel the depression. You need to go through these stages, because they're all part of the healing process. Don't rush through anything and feel like, oh, I should be somewhere. I should be somewhere else. I should be better by now. People are telling me to get over it. Why aren't I just getting over it? These things, these time limitations, these pressures, these are all false. They don't apply. You are where you are. It is what it is. So what are you going to do with that now? That's where you need to make the decision. So feel what you're feeling. Express how it in every way that you can, whether it's music or writing or screaming at the walls when no one's around, whatever it is that you need to do to get it out. But then it's time to say, okay, this is how I'm feeling. This is where I was, and this is where I want to go. So set yourself a plan. It might be your very first step, might be getting out and doing some volunteer work. So the reason why we're doing that is, one, we're breaking the cycle. We're getting out of our current culture uh, surroundings that we're living within. It gives us a new outlook, new people to be around. But the people that are doing volunteer work, and the volunteer work itself, is a very positive experience. All kinds of positive endorphins are going through your system, all these wonderful feel good chemicals. You come back feeling like you've done something, you've had a positive impact, you've done something to make the world a little bit better. And that gives you a sense of that you have value. Maybe you have purpose. Maybe you'll discover a passion by doing this volunteer work. It helps you feel, it helps you take out of that mindset, that closed mindset, that darkness, and it opens up your mind to another place. Um, so that so that you're in a different world. And when you break out of that multiple times, all of a sudden that door opens a lot more freely and you can get out of it a lot easier. It's sort of like when people tell you step into the fear and do it anyway. Well, the first
Yeah.
time you do it, I mean, you're terrified. You're throwing up, you're sweating, you're a mess, but after you do it multiple times, you're still feeling the fear, but it becomes easier to step on that path. It gets easier to step through that fear and doing it anyway. You're still feeling it, but you're doing it. You get stronger. You're able to do it more and more frequently. Eventually, your life is going to evolve. But that's where I would start. I would break the cycle and start doing something that's beyond yourself, that's greater than yourself.
Ideally, that's what it is for me when it's overcoming adversity and just developing that resilient type of mindset and really putting things into perspective and just cognitively thinking about it. Because a lot of us, I wouldn't say a lot of us, but a good bit of people you would say operate out of fear. And once we actually step through fear and go past fear, it's just more lessons and lessons of lessons and teaching us to build up our confidence in regards to what we're actually doing or what we're actually facing. So, Lillian, your story is truly, truly amazing.
Oh,
If you could
thank you.
share with our audience now, you've progressed, you've excelled in life. Can you tell us a little bit about what you got going on? I know you have a blog page that we have popping up here on the screen. Can you tell us a little about what you have going on, or what some things that you have planned coming up in the future with yourself, or you and Dave, or with your business, or anything like that?
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Well, Dave and I moved to a region that we had dreamed of moving to for a really long time. We used to come camping out here and, this beautiful region called the Kootenays of BC. And one day we just said, that's it, we're going to move there. And that was 12 years ago, almost 13 years ago. And it's been a struggle, but it's been a really wonderful experience. We relaunched our business here and we created the lower half of our home into a studio. So Dave does his drum teaching and repairs and workshops down there. And that's one portion of our business called Brummet Media Group. Now, Dave and I have been together for about 33, 34 years, something like that. And we started the business together about 25 years ago.
Wow.
So when we launched it here in this new community, we revamped everything right down to the very beginning. And I'm really glad that we took that effort to do that. We now have 6 books available on Amazon. We have a trilogy coming out soon. We have several books coming out after that. I run 2 really popular blogs. One is called the Brummet's Conscious blog, and we have, anywhere between 7,000 to 140,000 a month visiting that blog. So it's a really popular blog. The other blog is called Drum It with Brummet. It's for drummers and percussionists mainly. And we also have the Brummet Media channel. So between all of those activities, I keep myself kind of busy.
You know what? I'm so thrilled and inspired to hear your story and your journey, and now to
Thank you.
hear the story. I could see the smile, I could hear the joy and all those things in a totally, totally different place. And now you're helping people. I'm truly, truly thankful for you to come on here and just share your story. So thank you so much, Lillian.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Before we get out of here,
Mhm.
if you could leave our audience with some words of wisdom from your experiences, from your story, that they could take away and have impact into their lives.
Mm. Okay. Be patient with yourself. Number one, be patient with others too. Try to remember that when that we're offering advice, they're trying to do so from a place of kindness and with the intent of trying to help you. So when you find it irritating, try to look at it in a different way. So definitely be patient with yourself. The first thing that I would really want to recommend for the audience today is to eliminate negativity in your life. As we mentioned earlier, whether that's, magazines or newspapers or shutting off the news or the programs you choose to watch or the conversations you choose to have. These are things that we have direct control of right now today that can have an impact and our path from the darkness that we're in now towards the lighter life that we're looking for the future. So I would definitely start there.
Absolutely. Well, Lillian, thank you so much for being a guest on the Overcoming Adversity podcast. If anybody wanted to work with you, book you on a podcast, call you up to talk about your book or anything like that, how can I get a hold of you?
Oh, the best place to go is our main website, which is brummetmedia.ca. That's BRUMMET media.ca. Or, of course, they could just do a search online and they'll find all our socials and what have you from there.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for being a guest, Lillian. Truly a pleasure. I look forward to seeing all the great things that you and your husband have coming up in the future.
Thank you.
Guys, if you like this episode, make sure you leave a comment, but make sure you share it with a family or a friend, as we know that these stories could make an impact or empower somebody else's life. Until next time, God bless.
Can't complain at all. Couple dollars in my pocket, no income and go. Been working on my body, getting healthier. Thank God for clarity.